We've got Stephen Pope here today. He's an experienced seller and also runs his own agency called My Amazon Guy. And what are the types of things that you guys do at My Amazon Guy? Like what types of services for sellers?
Full service digital marketing agency. So anything within Seller Central can be in scope. So PPC, SEO, design, that's an important one, and catalog management. And of course, if you get your PickFu designs correct, your PPC team has a much easier job, right? Also, if you have the right main image and you have a higher click-through rate, then your SEO is better too, right? So just the benefits go on and on. Does anybody want to know how to beat their competition? Yeah, like everybody on the call, right? So we're going to start with this. This is a redesign of my packaging, and I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Here is what I currently do today. And one of the tests, I did run this against our new designs and had some surprising results we'll show you. But so here's what we currently are. Here's where we're trying to move towards. And there is a strong crossover following in the footsteps of Dr. Squatch here. And so which brand packaging do you prefer? Well, when this first came out, this was our first test, I got pretty excited because we actually won this survey, right? And it's like, wow, to beat Dr. Squatch on brand packaging, which brand packaging do you prefer? Right now, I think the number one thing that I learned from PickFu very early on, the way you word your question is like 80% of the importance on how you run the poll. So even though I've got a poll here that says my packaging is better, that does not necessarily mean they would prefer to buy my product, right? And so if you ask that slightly different question, you might get different results, right? So I think this is a super overlooked thing with PickFu, and a lot of people just flip my light on there. So what's really cool though is if you look at the comment section, right? If I type Control F Squatch, 13 mentions of Squatch in the comments. It literally doesn't even matter what they're talking about. Like, I'm not going to read off 13 comments to you guys. The point I want to make here is that Dr. Squatch has a polarized brand. Either they freaking love it or they freaking hate it. Like, there is no in between on whether you want some furry animal logo on your soap. And so that was one of my biggest learnings early on, right? And if you type in Control F Sage, there's only 3 mentions of my brand mascot, right? Obviously, I've got a, kind of a blonde-haired girl, a little bit of Zelda-esque looking hood. That's intentional, right? And I decided that my target demographic was men between like 20 and 40 on the demographics. And so I'm going for that video game nerd who's played Zelda. So the second one I went, which product would you rather buy? Well, different results, 48-52. So I did a head-to-head single product, and we called ours charcoal aloe. They called theirs pine tar, right? And so it's not quite a head-to-head product to product, but it's pretty close. Still selling a black bar, if you will, and probably very similar scent and whatnot. So charcoal aloe, pine tar, and so 48-52. One of the cool things about PickFu is you can see these demographics, right? So version A, I aired younger. So the younger crowd liked to look at the nice little girl, but the older crowd took to Squatch. So I don't know if that means older people have a higher sense of humor. I'm not sure. Could be, don't know. You could also look at the education levels. You get your male to female identities here, income ranges, ethnicity, and I looked at the ethnicity several times trying to figure out what it was, and ironically, I lost the white vote, right? But like won everything else. So that was an interesting takeaway. It's like, okay, she's the white girl, but I lost the white vote. Go figure. We won't talk too much about race or identity politics today. Really not 100% sure on this. So I went head to head, but I went back to my original question: which brand packaging do you prefer? So same question, but a single product instead of a 4-pack. And I actually lost. So if you remember, on the other time I did this, I had the 4-stack and I won. So the data switched on me, right? So we got fresh falls this time. I went 1-to-1 and lost. So when we look down at some of the responses, funny, right? So let's do Control F funny on this. So 3 mentions of funny on the left. If we do Squatch again, 9 references to Squatch and only 2 references to Sage. So this theme that we've been looking at, their brand is a cult brand, mine is not. And the reason I keep referencing this cult brand angle is because as a marketer, your job is 10 times easier if you have a cult brand, because you know exactly who you're going after. And that brand identity, that customer identity, will help considerably. So if we go back to their live listing, I don't think they take advantage of it enough on the listing, right? Like they don't okay, so there's this one guy shot right there. Let's go look at their A+ content. They don't even have it, right? So like they're not taking full advantage of this end to end. But if you look at their store, they do it there, right? Like look at this guy. He kind of looks like a Squash, right? And so you can see like how much they take advantage of the direct to men. They've got men's soap on it, right? There's a lot of different things as you kind of contrast and compare, right? So it says men's natural soap on the Squatch bar, and on ours it says cold press artisan, right? And you can't really read some of the lower text, especially in search. So the CTR is probably not going to be affected by that. So really the question comes down to, are they clicking on it because it's a Squatch, or are they clicking on it because of the packaging? Those were the things we were trying to figure out. So next, I want to know, what about product layout? All right, so this was what I tested against originally, and this is what we were going to go to market with. And I was like, well, frick, if I can't beat my old product, there's something wrong with my layout, right? So we tested us against the competitor. We tested brand packaging and what would you rather buy. And now I'm getting into the layout question. Very different poll results. And well, it turns out when I tried to test my new product against my old product, I was using the absolute worst layout. That might have affected the voting just a tad, right? So this layout crushed everybody else. We're like 42 respondents picked this one. Worst layout versus my old product, right? And I lost. And then I did it with the new layout. And to make it fair, I took the other like-to-like layout. And then I came in 60-40. What was it about my old packaging that people were attached to? Was it just the fact they could see the soap? So I ran this test and I missed the mark, right? Like, oh, it looks out of the ordinary. It doesn't look right, right? Those were the kinds of comments that I received on this one. And I was like, okay, that's an aha moment. So don't just run 3 in packaging and 1 out. People don't like that. Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure how weird it was. I was on to something, but I wasn't on to something, right? Like I was on my journey, if you will. So that's when I finally ran a really good test. Oh, let's see. I think we got 2 more actually. So then I was like, okay, they want to see the bar, but how do they want to see the bar? And I was trying to figure out this, like, how do they want to see the bar? So I was like, okay, well, we'll just put like a 4 shot in the bottom right. And I actually, this isn't how I told the designer to make this. This is just what they decided to do. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll run it, right? And it won. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So the people liked the packaging on top of the soap bar. And what I do like about this design is that you can see that like hole right there, and it's right next to the soap. And so you kind of like, oh, you can see through the packaging, see the soap. So it kind of looks, I actually do kind of think it looks neat.
It adds a little depth to it too.
But yes. So, but then I was like, well, I'm just not 100% sold on that shot. I want to test it again. So I put 4 bars of soap on the bottom, took the original, and 4 soap bars on the top. And I wanted to know, does top or bottom make more sense? data shows by a long shot that they like having the soap bars in a row, right? So of all of the votes, 25 plus 8 beat the 17. And even if you just ignored those 8 votes and assumed they didn't exist, I was still 25 to 17. And I clicked this button, and this was the moment I was like, oh, that one should have been a head-to-head test instead of a rank order. So if you guys don't know, when you go to create a PickFu test, you can choose between rank order, where they go 1, 2, 3, or you can do head-to-head. I like A versus B. I like B versus C. I like C versus A. And that was kind of an overlook for me. But I thought this was so overwhelmingly that, guess what, guys? This is what I'm going with. Right. And for some of you at home watching this webinar, you're like, frick, Steven ran 7 A/B tests. What the heck? But I believe in this so much that this is going to prevent me from losing money on ads. It's going to help me convert better. It's going to help my SEO because we get some CTR increases. And overall, I'm 100% confident that through all the testing, I found the best main image. And I found the best packaging. So that's my branding, redo, repackaging rant. And Justin, any follow-ups on this? Otherwise, I'd love to go to your consumer questions.
What is the first thing you do or look for when you see your design lost?
I try and answer why, and I read every single comment, and I pin the comments that I'm like, okay, that's important. That's important. And then when I go back to the graphic designer and I'm like, okay, we got to make some changes directionally. I think this is the new angle or the new change. We had a lot of iterated process on like what to put on the packaging. And by the time we started running these tests, I was already certain of what to include.
John asks, how did you do your initial product keyword research?
So this is a little bit less PickFu oriented, so I'll go quick on this one. But at my Amazon guy, we're heavily focused on SEO, and we run 4 phases of SEO. And in our research phase, we're trying to figure out how can we index the most keywords. And as we progress through our SEO strategies, we focus on indexing, then ranking, and then market share in that order. And each phase has its own particular thing to do. But we spent a significant amount of time proving packaging as well as layout, right? Like if you summarize what we've covered already. So if you're just joining us, hit rewind, look at that later. The next thing we're going to talk about is advertisements. And so I bet you not very many people have thought about using PickFu to test their advertising creative, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Which advertisement are you more likely to click on? Very different. It didn't say buy, it said click on, right? And here we have an 82 to 18 clear mandate. And I think the reason this one lost is because the person's head is like, it's not a very good depiction. But in general, I think putting humans in product makes a lot of sense. Humans in the shot, that is, right? But if we look down on the copy, more informative, apps are perfect. The other picture is weird.
I'm amused and confused. That's a funny one. I'm amused and confused by the lady.
Yeah. So 5 times the lady was weird, right? Now, if you're fighting internally with your staff, you're like, guys, this image is weird. But your graphic artist is like, no, it's not. It's fine. Okay, run a PickFu test. And then you've got like a clear, like, well, according to this, 41 people think the other shot's weird.
Did anyone mention the phone in that one?
All right, let's do Control F phone. 16 references to phone.
Yeah.
So not only was it more informative, it's got an app.
It's more clear that
it's the
there's
same
some
exact
kind of
product
app with it.
Yeah, I think it's, the word info came up a lot. Well, I guess only 2 times, but the word phone came up 16 times. Yeah, so I think you can find like a word cloud. I don't know. Do you guys have an app or some sort of word cloud function?
It's coming out.
I'm not surprised by that comment. Makes sense that it would. All right, so here's another one. So we wanted to know which ad would do better. And this was a throwaway test, truth be told. We knew B was going to win, but we wanted to know by how much. So if you're wondering, Does it make sense to use a custom headline ad versus your standard sponsored brand ad? You now know that 94% of people prefer the custom headline ad, where you load a custom image. And if you have never heard of loading a custom image ad to your headline sponsored brand, you need to check that out. So this throwaway test, we just wanted to prove that by how much. We knew it was going to win. All right, so here's another one. Which advertisement are you more likely to click on? Here's our first closest test, right? And in here, we changed the text. That was it. All we did was mention unmatched quality and sophisticated design versus 10-slot leather watch box with valet drawer. Everything else is the same. The logo's the same, belt's the same, everything else. So sometimes you can run a text test to see what will perform the best. Not only in an ad, you could do titles, you could do marketing copy, which is kind of what we did here, and get some interesting results. So the language in option A is but more enticing, rolls off the tongue better, simpler but more to the point. Tagline, the product feels much more upscale, unmatched quality. All right, so you get some resonation there. B, more information about the product. Description says how many slots. Other optional description is kind of vague. More likely to click on B because it tells me the item is unavailable in all locations. Does it really? Okay, that one, I don't agree with that comment. I like seeing the capacity in larger letters. All right, so it's mentioned in the title of the product too. So you can get very different results on this. This is an example of when the demographics report becomes critical, right? Because maybe you know who the target audience is for this. Maybe it's younger, maybe it's older, right? And if you look at this, do we have a skew? Now, what's interesting is it kind of goes back and forth actually between age groups. Isn't that interesting? So the super young crowd liked A, and then the older crowd liked B, and then kind of mixed results in the middle-aged crowd, right? So that's basically if you were to just ignore the overall data set and you're like, okay, we don't have a full mandate. We don't have that 60-40 vote that I advocated for. Well, let's make the decision based on demographics then. And when we go down, okay, we know that people are more likely to buy a $100 belt when they're maybe a little bit more on the older side. However, the counter to that is like, okay, how much older? Are they 45 to 654 or are they 55 to 64? So my take on this particular product, I'd probably go in the 40s. Yeah. But as you can see, you go down one more slot, it swaps. So this is probably a good case of like, might be worth a retest and rethink or run some more copy options. I actually did a logo test for my company with PickFu, right? So this is interesting. I tested all caps, all lowercase, and proper case. And this is one of those instances where, okay, we really know all caps is off-putting. Like just completely destroyed. And as you can see from my sign behind me, that's been what we've been running for 4 years. And I'm like, oh.
I hope you guys didn't take it too hard.
Right? How many of you at home haven't tested your own company logo before? Because we just found out that people hated my logo. They just hated it. And finding out which one's best. And so I decided to go with proper case. And we have a clear winner on this one as well. I am so confident that it's worth every dime to run multiple tests on a main image. Now, having said that, one thing we didn't talk about today is the secondary image stack comparison. And we absolutely have run like the full stack against each other. So off screen here, I'm going to see if I can find one of the tests that we ran. Okay, I found one. So I'll share my screen here. So we were like, okay, we're going to make a new stack of images. Which one is better? Well, it came out 25 to 25. So it's like, oh man, we spent all this time making all of these changes and we have no mandate. Gosh dang it, right? And so what we had to do is we had to like run a second test on a 1-to-1 to see like, okay, which image do we think it's the one that's like making this change? And so like we knew that this image sucked and that was live on the listing. And we're like, we really need to convince them that this image is like an auto replace. So we ran this test and we're like, see?
Yeah, that's a great image.
So we couldn't win the mandate on the other test. And so we're like, okay, let's pick the one crappy image that we know has got to go. All right. So sometimes you got to retool that way. So I got somebody asked about angles. I found an angle test we ran. So here we have the same product, angled versus straight on. Maybe it's not the same product. The more I look at this one, based on the image, which would you rather buy? Clearly showing the angled shot as well as hang. Probably the hang is probably the main thing. Let's look at the word product showed up 31 times. Show, hang. So let's see, 9 people, 8 of them were on A. So seeing it hang. Here's the case example of seeing more information, right? Versus less information.
I mean, it gives you the context of how you're going to use it. It adds that nice depth without doing shadows, right? There was a question about shadows, but if you could add depth to the image without shadows, and this is one way is with an angle and actually showing it in use, I think that's great.
The one thing I really don't like about shadows is that they make the product smaller because they show on the bottom of the product. And so your cropped isn't as zoomed in.
All right. How many hero images would you have ready to test or rotate in the launch period? And would you pre-pull those on PickFu?
So I generally will, before I launch, run the test to decide which is the main image to launch with. Then when I launch the product, if it doesn't do well, I will run additional tests with additional ideas. Which title do you like the most for a listing on Amazon? 70 to 30. Now, the reason I don't like running title tests too much is because I know less is always going to have like a bias, right? So like here you have the bias for 35 to 15, but as an SEO marketer, it's really hard to shorten a title. So if I was going to run a title test on PickFu, I would make sure the length is identical, because if you do short versus long, I can tell you 100% of the time short's going to win. Here's a context shot, right? Can you get away with putting something that it goes on top of in the main image? Well, data shows you might want to give it a try because it's a clear winner here. Here's when I was trying to figure out no label versus label. This was a year ago when I was trying to fix these products. And 90 to 10 show the label, right? Like don't go only bars. That was a good test that we learned. Box or no box? Do we include the box in the shot? And a little even here, a little bit even, surprisingly. Type of box shot. Here's another example of,
that's a good one.
Of like getting too creative, right? Don't do the plus shot. 66-34. They want the boring square. Right. I'll be honest. I did not expect it to win by that much. This one's going to be a landslide 94-6. Isn't that interesting though? This is not one that I would have guessed would be a landslide. I'll be totally honest. Right. So I haven't actually read this one. My team ran this one. So image shows up 15 times. 14 times. I prefer the larger image of the bear.
That's about the
which
same,
doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the extra detail. Image B looks like better fit. So sometimes you get test results or comments that may or may not make sense. That's okay. But when you get a landslide like this, it doesn't matter what the comments say. Go with B, right? Like that's a mandate. In the box or out of the box. And I mean, you get to see the whole product on the box shot. Slight win.
I would have tried the stuffed animal in front of the box also.
That's what I would test next. Absolutely. Maybe even like put the stuffed animal big in front of the box, since it's kind of a great looking box though. It is pretty good. So box versus no box. We did that one. Which one will make you buy more? Why in the world would less product win? Right? Like I'm at a loss on this one.
Is that the only difference? It's just less.
There's less product here beating more product.
Larger,
I don't know why
larger and
that
clearer.
one
You
won.
could see the label a little bit better.
So sometimes if you put too many things, too much detail, you might come up with a weird
Because those
result
last
like
three are
that.
repeating, right? And so people are probably thinking, well, why do you need to show that same one over and over?
So if you haven't run a PickFu test yet, go do it today, right? Costs you $50 to run a basic test. I highly recommend it. I endorse it. I have PickFu all over my website, and it's one of my top favorite tools, and all Amazon sellers need to run it. My name is Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy. We have over 330 brands that we work with, just as many employees, full service agency, PPC, SEO design, and catalog. And as you can see from today's testing, we very much are continuously working on a listing. It's not set it and forget it.